Hey guys, I'm Chris,
And I'm Mike.
and welcome back to this month's No Limits, the Scot Harvath podcast. How you doing today, Mike?
I'm good. It feels great to be back here on the Thor podcast. We've been real active with all the Mitch Rapp, Kyle Mills news. Then we were on the No Limits thriller podcast feed, covering some different books and authors like Ward Larson and Connor Sullivan. But today, I would say with Foreign Influence, we are back to quintessential Brad Thor. This is absolutely a Brad Thor novel.
Yeah, no, and I think we're going to find through the course of our discussion today, at least I believe, and I want to get your opinion of it, I think Brad is really beginning to hit his stride. You know, we've gone through this period of, I don't want to say ups and downs, but just like trying to, what sort of author does he want to be? He's trying all these different things, hopping around from having, the book like Lions, which is, I feel like this book is very similar to Lions. A little bit crisper, a little bit better. But then like going to something like a blowback where you're doing some sort of mystery. And then again, when we go to like The Apostle, right? Just these one-off sort of genre plays, or like Blowback doing like an Attack on the City, Attack on Manhattan, and
Takedown.
Now Takedown, yeah. But now, and I hope I'm not going to eat my words here, but I feel like when we're going to go from this novel to Full Black to Blacklist. And I think this also is important because we're bringing in the Carlton Group. And I think that's what we've kind of been missing. We've been talking about it a lot, this idea of not having this common cast of characters that to always sort of fall back on, that we like always root for. Like that's what Mitch has in, with the Marcuses and the Irenes, and like, I guess he had Gary for a little bit, but then Gary would like come and go, and we haven't seen Gary for a couple books now, right?
Right.
But now, like, I think Reed and the Troll and, eventually Lara are going to be important, these fallback characters until eventually, spoiler, we lose them again. So, like, I think Brad is always trying to, he's making these characters and, trying new things. And I guess that's something that's refreshing. We don't see that in some other novels. But yeah, anyways, back to my original point, I'm rambling, that I think, this is the last book in the 2010, not the 2010s, but the 20-aughts, right? And it's like a turning of what sort of author Brad is going to be. I see remnants of Rising Tiger in this novel.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better. I feel like we're turning a page. And when Reed Carlton and the Carlton Group is introduced, you just can't help but shout, yeah, let's go. I was like so jazzed that this is finally the book that's ushering us into that next era. Like we said on the Vince Flynn podcast and Mitch Rapp a lot, there was early Vince, and then there was like post Consent to Kill Mitch and Vince.
Yeah.
And you could see the writing evolve. You could see it move to this next level. And I feel like that's happening with Brad. And this, to me, this stretch of books coming up soon is what I think of when I think of a Brad Thor novel. It still has the globetrotting. So that's been there from the very beginning. But now we're adding this cast of characters. We had the Troll earlier, and then he disappeared. It's like, do I want to use him? How much do I lean into this? And this book, we're committed to him.
Yeah. Also, like when we saw the Troll before, it was almost like Brad was toying with this idea of, do I want to make him a full villain? Do I want to make him an adversary? Do I want to keep him in the middle where he is? And I think this book is still leaning more towards adversary, but now we're crouching more towards being a friend. We're slowly building that relationship up.
Right. The trust is there. They still are going to have some jabs at each other, but the trust is there. I think ever since that op they went on a few books ago, where they kind of saved each other at this lake house,
right, at the very end,
and they needed each other. Now I think we're seeing the fruits of that friendship into they can lean on each other in operations in full kind of trust, and I think that's going to really kick the storyline into gear. And the other thing I'll say is, as kind of saddening as it is that we're moving on from this whole Apex project and Gary Lawler's like secret team buried in the OIAA. It's kind of like a mourning that we're moving on to that from that, but then you get the description of the Carlton Group and who they are.
It's essentially
like,
a continuation. Yeah,
Right,
yeah.
but you're just like, let's go. It's kind of injecting. It's like a shot of adrenaline into the series, and I think this book is pure setup. And there's a few other things we're going to get there. This book is set up in that way with the Carlton Group, but it's also set up in a main way for a couple of plot lines that are left unfinished at the end here.
Yeah, and also, is this the first time? No, I guess the first time we got it was when Tracy was shot. But like, this is bringing it back. That idea of Brad loves a cliffhanger.
Yes.
And I had always thought, I guess I remember, one distinct cliffhanger at the end of Spy Master, right? Which is a huge cliffhanger in the series. And I always thought like, oh, that's new. That's like, but no, it's not. He's had it in his novels before. What was the one where Tracy got shot?
Yeah, the end of Takedown, maybe, or Below. I think it was Takedown.
Yeah, no, it was.
He meets her there.
Yeah, it was the end of Takedown into First Commandment, and now we're getting another huge cliffhanger at the end of Foreign Influence, heading into Full Black. So
yeah, I'll add something though. It's also something new in that the preface, this opening action sequence, really draws you into Inner Mongolia and China, and then it's not really dealt with again. And it's
no, and I feel like he's done that in some of the novels going forward too.
Yeah, the ones that are coming, right? But I think this is the first time he's trying that, because that's bold to have an opening scene that you essentially never resolve in the course of an entire book. And it's a decently long book too. And I would say you don't even resolve it. You barely touch it. It's maybe hinted at once or twice, but at the end you come back to it and say, "Oh, this is one small detail in a much bigger plot, like a bigger conspiracy." Think of like an action movie. I was actually, another thing I was going to say, this book felt super Bond. And just imagine how many movies end with you conclude the plot and you figure out what you need to figure out. And the denouement is, oh, wait a minute, there's an even bigger plot you didn't know about behind this whole thing. And then it cuts to black. And I felt like this book just cut to black. And you're sitting there like, wait, there's got to be more. And it's coming.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of like how what was at the end of one of the James Bonds, we realized that it was actually like he was involved with Spectre, and that's what brought about the next movie, right?
Exactly, felt just like that. And there's a couple other things that are very.
I guess it's Skyfall. But yeah, so, but I think in Rising Tiger we get that opening scene again at the border of India and China, where I believe one of the characters is important later on, but that scene is only touched at very briefly throughout it to add context throughout the story. And this again is we're going to go there to China, and then we're only going to bring it back at the very end to that's why we were there in the first place, to shore this all up.
I'm not a big fan when that opening scene is not at all really brought in. It was just pure context setting. Yet I feel like here it's coming, and it wasn't just let's show you this random thing to have some pretty cool action to open up. Like I think and they even say in Inner Mongolia, there's like this Chinese academy where they're training deep sleeper
they only
agents.
Speak English. Yeah.
You're right. It's essentially more American than anywhere else outside of America, living in this one camp where you're training. And I feel like that's like what Russia was doing in the Cold War. And now to say China is doing that, you're opening up a lot of really cool doors. And I don't think we've seen the fruits of it yet. And I'm really hoping it comes next book. Or I guess we should say 2 books. Because with the introduction of the Athena Project, yet another step, this book is taking us forward in many ways. It's advancing the series. And another way that's happening is with an Athena Project. And we're going to get a whole book on them. So I don't think some of these plots will play out for another book or even 2 or 3.
I know we sort of had a discussion about like, how do we cover the Athena Project? Because it is not part of the series. It's like, he wanted to try something new. I remember reading it and really enjoying it. And obviously I kind of forgotten, because I don't think I read it like right away. Or maybe I even read it before, because I think, again, Brad makes a cameo in there, how they make an extended cameo in this series. But I had really forgotten how big of a role they played in this novel.
Yeah.
So, but I think it makes the most sense. Now that we got them, we should cover them for the next book, and then the following month go back to the series with Full Black.
Agreed. Well, someone from the Athena team makes a cameo in my limerick.
Give it to us.
Well, I love this character, and so I had to put her in here. Reed Carlton is known as the Old Man, and Scot Harvath a main part of his clan. We meet Gretchen Casey. Oh, but what about Tracy? Across continents, the action will span. I like this Gretchen Casey. I think she is just so much fun going in there with Scott, getting her hands dirty, and all the other Delta women. I thought it was a really cool move by Brad. And the whole time, Tracy's on the back of our mind also, like, Scott's going to have to make some hard decisions here. And at the end, we learn they do part ways, and she does understand his desire for a family is something she can't provide. So we also got to talk a little women in this podcast here as we break down this book.
Yeah, I guess we can just talk about it now. I thought we've been dealing with this whole Tracy thing for a couple books now, and I guess maybe Brad didn't know like how he was going to end it. I could see him. He had brought in this character, but maybe like either wasn't ready for it to have Brad settle down, didn't love the Tracy character that much. I don't know, like why. Like she was completely off, pretty much off book last novel, right? And completely off book this novel. We don't even the going away of her. We don't even get on screen. It's like Scott is just telling us after the fact, what happened. And we not only get two potential love interests in Gretchen Casey, but also this doctor, Riley, that's part of the Carlton group.
He keeps thinking about her, yeah.
Yeah. So very interesting how, Brad is thinking about Scott's love interest. How's it going in the future? Ultimately, how satisfied were you with the transition away from Tracy and now setting us with the next, love interest of Scott's life?
Yeah, I mean, I'm okay with it. It's fine. The one thing that just kind of rubs me the wrong way or isn't sitting well is how often he had to put the line in Scott's head like, oh, I'd really like to have a family one day. Too bad I can't do it with Tracy. I think we knew that's where Scott's mind was. And I think bringing it up once or twice in the context of he's operating and saving children, that's a good time to bring it up. Yet I think it was mentioned 5 or 6 times, maybe even 7.
Pretty much every time. Yeah.
Yeah. Did that take you a little bit out of it? Just like it's planted here just because this book is going to end with a breakup and I just want to prep the reader for it? Or did you feel like every time it was brought up, it authentically would have been on Scott's mind at that time? Like, did it take you out of the story at all with how often it was written?
Maybe sometimes. I feel like the better ways it was woven in was with maybe like Padre Pio.
Yes.
References like, oh, you have kids? Like, no. Like, oh, well,
exactly.
It's because he had kids and he was an operator like Scott is and knows like that, lifestyle. That is, and like you said, when he's at the very beginning of the novel, when we see Scott, he's over in Iraq, he rescues those kids from the hole. That is another, memory. Or at the very end where he's
saving the 6-year-old.
Saving the 6-year-olds. Like, yeah, of course you're going to think about like,
right.
Should I even have kids?
Those moments made sense to have Scott thinking about it. But then it was a couple of others where it was just thrown in.
We're in Scott's head. I don't know. Maybe that's just because we're in Scott's head a lot. And, it's just naturally you would be maybe thinking about it in the back burner, not as direct. You don't think as direct as someone who's writing out what someone's thinking, thinks think. Like it's sort of always in the background. Yeah, I think it was just meant to be there to set us up. I could read from the beginning that, oh, Tracy's gone at the end of this novel,
Yeah.
Especially when he starts looking at, he gets interested in Riley. He's also, I'm almost positive he has some sort of interaction with Gretchen Casey going forward after this novel. So,
but then there's also a lot of really funny jokes with some of the operators of the Athena team, and I really love how Brad probably captures what a lot of female warriors are like when they're operating with men. Like they're
Yeah.
in there in the trenches, same jokes, same dirty, dark humor. Like it's a way to equalize, I would say, the playing field between them. And it's like, what was her name? Rodriguez, or the one who gets stuck under that wall that they have to
Yeah.
save?
Yeah.
And the Amsterdam red light district stuff. And she's all dressed up because they're playing call girls. I just think a lot of that banter was a lot of fun. And it really takes you inside the group dynamics of a group of what I would imagine female warriors are really like.
Yeah, I don't know if it's because her name was Rodriguez, but and I think the way she was described is like I think she was the one who was Latin.
Agent Rivera
from Mitrap.
Mitrap.
No, I was saying like
No?
from Michelle Rodriguez from like the movie star, like Fast and the Furious and SWAT, a bunch of different things. Like she just she's that badass.
Gotcha.
Is the woman who can handle men in any situation. She just reminded me of that.
Oh, that's good. No, I was thinking of the dojo scene where that chick kicks Mitch's ass and puts him on his back, and then she gives him some lip later, I think too. So
Right. No,
I
all
like
these
that little
characters are
edgy
interesting.
character.
There's we have an African American. We have this tall blonde chick. I love how as soon as they described all of the, I shouldn't call them chicks. As soon as they described all of the female agents and the blonde one, and then they have to blend in. I knew immediately. Oh, well, the tall blonde one is not going to be used. Just thinking about that. There's also reference to a sixth member of their team who's injured, and I think she comes back in the one-off novel. So we're going to meet her, going forward. But yeah, no, I want more of these Athena groups in our novels.
Yeah, I'll absolutely agree to that. And one other, it's a complete other type of female character that's often a trope in these stories, but is pulled off real well, is the bondwoman. When they're in that scene in that real fancy car and he kidnaps her to get out of the hotel and escape the hotel, and she's flirting with him, even though she is the wife of the billionaire owner of this hotel, some Middle Eastern dude, and it's got everybody chasing her.
He's Russian.
Oh, the Russian, excuse me, the Russian mafioso. And there's helicopters chasing him, and she's just in the car flirting with him, and she ultimately helps him escape and drops him off somewhere, and then takes the tail across town and is sitting in like a coffee shop or something when they find her.
Yeah, drinking some wine. Yeah.
It's just a brilliant scene. I absolutely love that sequence. So it's a different type of female character, but it was just written. It was like a Bond movie. I don't know what else to say besides that whole sequence. I just felt like it was really cinematic, this whole book. Almost every action sequence had a cinematic feel to it. Did you get that sense?
Yeah. I'm just thinking we are really traveling heavy in this novel, dude. We start off, we're in Inner Mongolia, as you mentioned. We go to London, where we have that phone call. We go to Chicago. We have the whole Chicago storyline, which was pretty interesting. I enjoyed those characters. Scott wrote those two cops pretty funny. And, whereas I think back to, and ultimately these stories came together much at a bigger head than when this was pulled off before by Brad, but it was reminding me of that Secret Service who was like investigating the president. And, I like that story, but like I found that I wanted to be back more with the Brad storyline. Whereas this, I didn't really care. Like I liked both of them equally. Mainly because the one cop was really funny.
Oh my God. They were so funny together. The two of them, it was this Vaughn and what was the other guy's name?
Davidson.
Vaughn and Davidson. These almost like crooked cops, you might call them, but in a charming way. They were hysterical. It was everything I wanted in comedic relief. And we really cut to them quite a bit. And they're trying to investigate. So they're brought in to investigate this car accident that happens in Chicago. And a grieving family feels like the authorities are getting nowhere with them and basically say, it happens too often. We have no leads. Yet one of these guys is also a lawyer. And so he's a lawyer cop who's really good in investigations. and was a Marine as well. Or it's the second guy who's the Marine. And the good thing is he also works in the public vehicles department. And so he really knows how to track down cars and follow leads. And these guys just team up to try to find out who hit this lady. And what they stumble into is an even bigger plot. And eventually they get taken themselves by the same terrorist group that Scott ends up having to hunt. And I really liked how we had these parallel storylines. And you're right. Sometimes I don't want to be taken away from the main action and the main plot and the main character. But these two were such a rip that I loved every time we cut back to them. The one guy's talking about his wife and now he's just always in trouble with her. It was just a really, really good time. And then when the stories come together, I thought that was really well done. Because sometimes you're reading these parallel storylines and you have no idea how they come together and it's kind of forced.
Right. You could see the threads and it made sense how they came together.
It did. You knew where it was going in a way that was still intriguing because you didn't know exactly how it would happen, but you knew it would make sense when it did.
Right. And I really liked this, the Rashid character. And I had remembered, obviously when I first read it, I didn't realize that he was, Sean Chase, this deep, deep cover CIA guy. But as I'm reading it, something clicked that like something's up with Rashid. And then as I'm reading it more and more and more, and I see the clues as to like, he's playing this persona as this like know-it-all, perfect blend, can blend in. That's why obviously, Al-Qaeda, whatever terrorist group liked him, but also why the CIA ultimately liked him because he could blend so well into it. But at every move, he's trying to find out more information, trying to insert himself, and as soon as he says, "Oh, we're going to get better ammunition," and I'm going to drive all night to go get it. I remembered, oh, that's because he's going to he does something with the ammunition. So upon reread, you can sort of like see how he's inserting himself and how you could, if this was cinematic, you as the viewer could see how we would know he's a deep cover agent, but obviously the people he's around don't, or maybe even have suspicions of it. You can see how they're sort of playing that whole storyline itself could be a movie. Like just having him in there as a main character and not even having, maybe Scott is like a secondary character on the side trying to also chase this down would be an interesting and compelling novel.
Yeah. I would say though, there's another layer to it that I think takes this even farther because I was completely hoodwinked. That was like a Howdy twist to me when Rashid is revealed as this deep cover CIA operative. And the same way Scott doesn't believe it, he's like, we got to call you in and talk to your handler at Langley to vouch for you because I'm not just buying this story. I'm in some mosque, there's a terrorist plot being planned, and you're all of a sudden acting like you're on my side. Like Scott doesn't want to get played. Well, I was played because I thought the reveal was that Marwan, who is one of the big bads, basically the older man behind all this in the mosque, I thought he was grooming Rashid to take the place of one of the bombers.
He was.
Yeah, I know he was, but I thought that was going to be the huge reveal. And like,
oh, gotcha.
I was led to be on the edge of my seat of like, how is Rashid going to respond when Marwan keeps saying, "Here, have some tea. Tell me, are you at peace?"
Yeah, because you could tell that Rashid did not want to do that. He was like down to be part of the game, but not so much as to go that far.
Yeah, and Marwan was really grooming him, right? To say like, Rashid, you're ready for this next step in your martyrdom. And at the same time, like Rashid is really pushing this off. And how does he not see it? Like, I think something would have clicked of like, my master is essentially trying to get me to be ready to sacrifice myself. I think he would have seen that that's where it was heading. And I never in a million years I thought that was the conflict, right? His conflict with Marwan was, I don't want to do it. I have cold feet. He's going to be forced into do it. Maybe he tips off the authorities because he's sick of Marwan pushing him into it when he's not ready. A typical storyline. But that's not it at all. He essentially turns on Marwan in the shootout and when the grenade goes off when they storm the mosque or the office. I think it's Marwan's office building. I didn't see it coming. So that was, I would say, one of two or more really big plot twists The last one, I guess we should save for the ending because it's the
We'll
very
save that
end
for
of the
the end.
epilogue. But
Yeah, we'll save that at the very end. Yeah.
that's not even the biggest, I would say, maybe not even the biggest plot reveal, is that Rashid was one of the good guys all along. There's something else coming.
Yeah, so, I guess we interrupted ourselves while I was going through traveling heavy. We go through 1, Inner Mongolia, 2, London, 3, Chicago, 4, Basque Country, Bilbao, Escatatu, Rome. That's what, 7? Before we even get Scott in Fallujah.
Yeah.
Crazy. Then we go to Virginia. We go to the French Riviera. We go to Paris. We go to Geneva, Switzerland, London, Amsterdam. So
Dude.
in the end, we end up back in Chicago.
We're traveling very heavy.
We are traveling very heavy. Yes. So
is that the most? I think that's the most.
It has to be, or close to it with, because I know Lions was pretty high up there. We got to go out actually count them up. But yeah, I think we should probably talk about like what the plot of this actual novel is, right? So we're in the very beginning. We get this Mongolia thing. Something's happening there. We know that there's these people obviously talking about a hit, and then we begin to see these various attacks through the course of the novel. One being Rome, the next one being in Paris, and then finally in Amsterdam and London, which Scott is able to prevent almost all of those attacks. And we don't know what group is being involved with this. However, the troll who was attacked and is staying with this Padre Peo character in Basque Country was attacked by an assassin who he actually invited in. He paid for to kill him because it was an escort. But yeah, and Scott, who's over in Iraq, saving children, gets called in by his new boss, the Carlton Group. We should mention we mentioned that the Carlton Group is brought in. We get a new Gary figure in if you want to call him that, in Reed Carlton, or AKA Peaches. And Scott is brought in because he has this relationship with the troll. So I guess we could kick it off by saying, what did you think about the attack on the troll? And second, what did you think about the introduction of the Carlton Group?
Those are 2 great questions. Let me table the Carlton Group just because I really enjoyed all of the stuff in Basque Country where the troll is kind of holed up in this monastery with an old friend of his, a former intelligence officer, Padre Peo. I love this stuff.
I really like that character, Padre Peo. I liked him a lot.
Dude, absolutely. I think you and I are going to have to try to sort out who gets to claim him in our winner's favorite section at the end. But there's a couple of other options too. So
yes, no, definitely.
I don't think this book is wanting at all for options of the free space. 5 out of 5, and he's up there. But even just the whole intrigue of it, even to get the escort in, you go into this region, there's some separatist groups, so there's some unlawfulness going on. But then these 2 men meet you in the woods, take you on horseback up this mountain for a couple of hours. This monastery up in the hills of the Pyrenees is really cool. And then when you hear the troll is being set up, I mean, you could lose that. You could forget this whole plot where they're trying to frame the troll because it happens like that 1/3, maybe halfway mark of the book. And then boom, there's a ton of other action in the second half of this book. But let's not neglect the really interesting storyline of the troll being framed. Reed Carlton is given video evidence of someone with dwarfism meeting 4 Middle Eastern men and passing off suitcases. And he's got 2 dogs, 2, what are they, ovcharkas. And this is video evidence. And so Reed Carlton is really telling Scott, you go find and take in your little buddy over there. I know you've used him in the past, worked with him in the past, but we got to take him in and figure out what this is all about. Yet that's the exact moment where Scott got a call from Padre Peo saying, get over here, the troll needs you. And by the way, he's being framed. I have information that shows it's all a setup. And so, I mean, that is like your launch the mission, because if you will, that might be where the action kicks off. The whole plot kicks off, is that Scott gets this tip. He thinks the troll's innocent. He's got to go meet this padre to get the info and the intel. Meanwhile, his boss, Reed Carlton, is saying, bring the troll in. I felt that was a great bit of storytelling that almost fades away in the second half of the book, yet was really, really fun and cool while we were doing it.
Yeah, no, and I think we are beginning to see this, budding friendship, like I said, between Scott and the troll, because he knows, even though Reed shows up at his residence and says, go, like you said, go get him. But Scott knows deep down that this is not the troll's MO. This is not. Yeah, he does some shady shit, but he's not going to purposely sell weapons. He might sell information that leads to attack, but not going to sell the actual weapons.
Right.
And so why would Scott stick up for someone who he knows was involved in the plot in New York, or someone who, I guess he gifted him a dog, which he Bullet, that he appreciates. And there's that connection that they shared, like you said, at the end of the one novel where they sort of save each other. But yeah, Scott owes the troll nothing. So he could literally just listen to his boss and go over there and snatch and grab him. But he is coming into it immediately saying, well, no, I'm not going to go over there and do that. I'm going to go over there and find out the truth.
Yep.
Yeah, no, the whole ETA thing, I did some reading up about ETA, this now quote unquote extinct, Marxist military group. Interesting, I love how Scott is able to weave in, not Scott, I love how Brad is able to weave in, these little touches, these little, to make me feel like I'm traveling, in a new country.
Yeah.
And, bringing in some relevant history with that area, and obviously having these characters involved with that group that would have been present, during the whole, that, separatist time.
Yeah.
And the Padre Peo character, I think, shows a nice, he almost has like a Mitrap moment where like his wife is killed, and is his child killed as well?
I believe so, but he
didn't have children.
That's right.
Yeah, he said if he had had the children, he wouldn't have gone down the whole path of suicide, attempted suicide and
that's right.
And whatnot.
That's right. He finds a much different purpose though than Mitrap by going into the monastery and the priesthood.
Yes, but that's only after he essentially loses everything. Right? He has no credibility anymore because he's just burned all his money, taking all these drugs, whatever. So,
yeah, you're right about that. Well, so that was a great discussion of the troll. Really enjoying this whole stuff in Spain, or in Basque Country. I guess the separatist would say is not Spain, but you asked me about the old man also, and I absolutely love the introduction here. And I've got a couple of quotes here. Forgive me if they're long, but they go a long way in establishing what becomes, like we said, quintessential Brad Thor. That becomes basically, would you say, not quite Stan Hurley, not quite Thomas Stansfield, but almost the amalgamation of Irene, Stanfield, and Hurley, like this main character who's going to be handling Scott from here on out, essentially, and basically feeding him the intel and giving him the job. So here's our introduction quote. Named after its founder, Reed Carlton, a retired 30-year veteran of the CIA and one of the nation's most revered spy masters. The Carlton Group was composed of patriots who wanted one thing and one thing only, to keep Americans safe no matter what the cost. He had assembled a small group of operatives with military and intelligence experience to carry out immediate action assignments. Using the popular Pentagon catchphrase, find, fix, finish, and follow up, he explained that Harvath would be responsible for identifying terrorist leadership, tracking them to a specific location, capturing or killing them as necessary, and using the information gleaned from the assignment to plan the next operation. The goal was to apply constant pressure to terrorist networks and pound them so hard and so relentlessly that they were permanently rocked back on their heels, if not ground into the dust. Man, that's what we want our Harvaths and Raps to be doing, isn't it?
Yeah, ultimately he's described like the perfect intelligence apparatus, like you take the best parts of the FBI, CIA, NSA, whatever. He even mentions that Scott, which, you know, he doesn't say Sargasso Group. He says he's working for some company in Colorado. So, like, Carlton bought up the Sargasso Group.
Right.
So he's got this whole intelligence apparatus without the whole government red tape bullshit.
Yep.
But also gets funded from the government, like through these super deep coffers. Like, it reminds me of, you know, it's just, like we said, it's essentially the Apex Project, you know, 2.0, right?
Right.
It's the Orion Project, you know, in the Brad Thor universe, right? But now he's not tied to any agency. Almost how I feel that if Don wants to decide to do this, what Mitch should ultimately do.
Dude, agreed.
I've been begging him. I've been begging them to do this in the Mitch Rapp novels, get him away
Nicholas
from the agency.
Ward. Let's payroll it.
Yeah.
I mean, there it is.
Yeah. So, but yeah, you know, I think you said it right. Just thinking of characters, you know, from what we know, Reed is like, I think he's a younger Thomas Stansfield, essentially, with a little bit of Hurley mixed in, because he obviously
leaves the government.
Past, right? Who leaves the government? Who
right.
decides to do it on his own?
Which Irene has an opportunity to do here.
Yes, she does. So
the old lady. We got the old man. Now we got the old lady.
The old man, the old lady. Yes, yes.
I don't like calling Irene old yet. Not yet. Not yet.
No.
She's still young enough in my mind. So to wrap it all up, I just love how the Carlton Group has been rolled out to us, and it gets even better. Just listen to this. Carlton planned clever psychological operations to eat away at the terrorist networks from within, sowing doubt, fear, distrust, and paranoia throughout their ranks like a cancer. It was everything the U.S. government should have been doing, but wasn't. That's the clincher. Like you said, we're totally removed from politics, from bureaucracy. The Apex Project was buried in DHS? I think it was like under Homeland Security.
Right.
You know, what Stan Hurley was doing had a lot of ties and links to the CIA. This is different, man. Carlton is completely out there on his own running this network, and I'm here for it. I love the way this whole thing is set up.
But he still has support, you know, from those in power, because and they want this to exist, because they obviously are getting money from the government somehow. But I like how it's not part of an agency. But yeah, no, I think, and I said this at the beginning, I think this is a nice budding relationship and a good place for Scott to be, where we're going to be tethered to something to always fall back on, and to give us, you know, touch points to ground Scott, touch points in terms of, you know, recurring characters that are involved with the Carlton Group. And obviously Reed is going to play a big role as being one of those characters. So I'm excited to see our progression, you know, through. So
yeah, I like it. Well, we should probably get towards some of the climactic action and the final terrorist plots. But just to recap where we are so far, because we've been all over the place.
Yeah, we have.
I'm going to let Reed Carlton sum things up, because it was really fun. It was almost like breaking, the fourth wall, when Reed is talking to Scott, and it's almost exactly halfway through the book, and he pretty much sums up everything Scott just did. And to me, it was just a perfect, succinct way to explain just how insane all the stuff is that just happened, like how gripping this book was. He says, "So let me get this straight. You trunked 2 Basque separatists, tasered a madam and her bodyguard after she kicked your tail, then bagged and dragged her to some French farmhouse where you threatened to disfigure her, then ice-boarded a concierge, shot 3 hotel security guards, kidnapped the wife of one of Russia's wealthiest mobsters, and you're now sitting in a hotel in Marseille waiting for a callback from the man I sent you over there to apprehend? Is that about right?" Like, yeah, that all just happened. And we're barely halfway through the book.
Yeah, we haven't even touched on, you know, and ultimately, I guess, you know, they're not super important, other than the fact that they allow Scott to move on to the next thing. But, you know, his when he goes and finally meets with the troll, right? The troll tells him that he got this prostitute from this lady. So Scott then, you know, following the leads, goes to this, you know, dealer of prostitute, whatever. What are they called? They have like a name.
You talking Dominique Fournier?
Like, yeah, she's like
she basically runs
pimp.
the escort service.
Yeah, a pimp, but like
she's
a
the
female pimp? Yeah. And then there's that whole exchange, which was kind of funny with the American bodyguard. And then, like Reed said, he goes to that hotel.
He takes her.
Waterboards, kidnap, gets this nice car, and then we talked about that. But yeah, all of that is just it's fodder to move, the plot along. Ultimately, like those things really don't matter. But I will say, there's been other parts of novels, not just Brad, but this entire genre or any genre, where there's extra things that are added that you don't really need them. But here I didn't feel like any of those things weren't needed, Does that make sense?
Agreed. No, it's all set up. The Padre Peo stuff, the troll stuff, taking the madam, finding the madam. She gives up a name.
Madam, that's what I was looking for.
Oh, Gaston Levesque. Gaston Levesque is the concierge he's talking about at the hotel.
Who does the ice water bath, yeah.
In the Riviera. Yeah, he waterboards him because Gaston Levesque was hired by somebody else. And in some ways, it's almost all of that is set up and kind of dead ends. They're just giving you a clue to the next guy, the bigger bad, if you will, in this food chain. Yet it doesn't feel like you're being led to nowhere. Like you're having so much fun with that action. It doesn't even matter that that's like still 5 steps removed from the tip that eventually will actually matter for stopping the terrorist plot. Like we don't even know anything about suicide bombers yet.
No,
or a Mumbai style shooting. We know nothing about it.
Other than the fact that I think we've gotten by this point interspersed
the Rome bombing,
the Rome bombing,
the Paris attack.
Soon will be the Paris attack. So like we know that like
Sure.
something's going on,
Yeah.
and then obviously the whole time we've been following these Chicago guys who, it's weird like why this cabbie hit and run. Like something we know we don't know that the cabbies are going to be involved somehow with
there's something
an
there,
attack, but there's something there.
Right. It's fun waiting for that link. Like
yes.
We're getting all these names, like Gaston Levesque hired Tony Swee, and then Tony Swee doesn't even exist. It's this lady at Geneva University, which was a really fun sequence.
Yeah, what did you think about
the professor's office?
About first going in, breaking into the professor's. This is like a Mission Impossible James. This is a total his James Bond novel. You nailed it on the head.
100%.
Like Scott Harvath in Foreign Influence.
Yep, indeed.
But there's that whole scene where then they think they have, she's there. She's like, oh well, was Michael Lee it was his postdoc / lover. Like you should go investigate him. So they go to this place, almost kill this
right
innocent dude, all because she was the one using it as a setup. That was pretty interesting and pretty fun to me.
It was pretty creative. This research assistant lady comes off as real innocent, gives him a lead on this other guy who was the professor's TA and gay lover and secret. He lived with him. Yet she was using all that. She was exploiting that and basically used them as a fake cover persona to deal in intelligence secrets. Like the troll had a pretty close relationship with her fake
identity.
Profile.
Yeah.
That is based around a real person. So if shit hits the fan, she can give up that guy, his picture, his profile, his everything will be traced back to it. And she seems clean. I thought that was just, again, another one of those really cool twists. And it ended up, I guess, maybe being, well, hold on. It felt like a side adventure. It's really fun when it's happening. After a while, you're like, what was that about? She gave us a name, sure, but we didn't really do anything else with her. And then boom, in the epilogue, something in her possession gets to the troll and makes a big difference, which we'll get to in just a few minutes. But yeah, it almost felt like these side adventures might not carry all that much weight, but then there are these little links of why they all mattered along the way.
Yeah, it's right after meeting her and her giving up the name, right? Which allows them to I guess that's what
go
allows
to London.
them to go to London, right? And so it's now where the book takes a turn where we're going to be full on. We're focused in the plot. We have this terrorist with these attacks, and we're not going to shy away from this anymore. And this is where boom, the Athena team comes in. They were working in Wales, right, with doing some training exercises.
Yep.
And so it's now Scott and the Delta's crew on the ground trying to figure out where this attack is going to be.
Yeah. And someone else meets them in London, an MI5 agent who knows Reed Carlton personally. He even has a lot of fun little stories, his days operating with Reed Carlton. And that's Robert Ashford.
Punched out Prince Charles, apparently, Reed did?
Dude, that was bananas.
Is that a true story? Someone punched Prince Charles? It has to be, right?
I don't know where that came from, but that was... Dude, this MI5 agent is recanting his times with Carlton. So Reed actually punched Prince Charles, right? That's what he was saying. So Reed Carlton was sent as part of the investigative team looking into Princess Diana's death. And during the course of that investigation, he heard Prince Charles either mumble something or say something very disrespectful about Diana, which sounds about par for the course. But Reed Carlton punches him out right there. Like, I think that is just... And everyone decides to cover it up to save face. And so he kind of gets away with it. And he even said some people, like himself, agreed with Reed doing what he did. That little nugget was just like, where did this come from, bud? Man, that's creative. I don't know how you come up with that.
But we also find out that this is what hampered Ashford's career. Ultimately,
Correct.
why he hasn't been knighted.
Right.
And why at the very end... Maybe that's why he holds resentment against Peaches. Do we want to just talk about the epilogue now, or do we want to talk about the Amsterdam and Trafalgar Square scenes?
Blah, blah, blah. They defuse a bunch of suicide terrorist vests. There's a shootout in a train station. Scott saves a bunch of school children and takes down a shooter, and end of story. Great. Yeah, let's get to the end.
No. We can't do that. We can't
I'm
do that.
I'm kidding. Oh, before we sign off, we also have to thank our patrons. And one way we want to do that is with a giveaway. And we do have a signed copy of Foreign Influence. We're going to give away a book. And we always love our patrons. For less than the price of a novel a month, you too can support the podcast and be the reason that we can make more podcasts. So head to thrillerpod.com and click on the Patreon tab to learn more. And as a thank you, we are giving away a book. We spun that wheel earlier today, and Chris is our winner. Chris H. We love chatting with you. You're on the Patreon group chat in our group chat app, and great hearing from you. Great learning what you're reading, and we'll be sending you a signed copy of Foreign Influence.
Well, that allows me to thank our patrons by name, including our special operator Sherry F., our special agents Daryl, Kevin, George, Ben, Matt, Dawn, Peggy, Ray, Bridget, and Mark. Please subscribe, rate, and review using your favorite podcasting platform to all 3 seasons of No Limits. You can find us online at thrillerpod.com or using Twitter and Insta at thrillerpodcast. And as always, find,
Fix,
finish,
and follow up.